a lot of people don't know the frustrations that go along when you overweight. I was almost 400 pounds at one time, and I couldn't even wipe my own behind. It was real bad. I know people used to look at me when I walked into the store, and I used to feel it. They didn't even have to say anything. I could see how they looked at me, and they judged me thinking that I was a person that overate, and that wasn't even the case. The case was that I was on medication, on steroids, because of a disease that I had called trigeminal neuralgia, and I had to have brain surgery, so they put me on steroids. And it blew me up to almost 400 pounds. And I had never been that big in my life. But at that time, I began to experience what I'm sure other people have experienced who have been overweight, probably their whole life, or just recently. You feel like people are looking at you for a long time. I felt like every room that I went into, I was the biggest person in a room. And it was really embarrassing. I didn't even want to go outside for a long time because people had never seen me like that. It was so frustrating, walking around, and the pain that I was in. I don't even want to talk about that. When you put that kind of weight on, the pain that's on your back, the pain that's on your legs, the pain that's even, on your spine area begins to become excruciating, But besides the pain, the way that I saw people and how they would look at me, how they would judge me, and how they would just stare at me like I was some freaking animal or something like that, and I'm no longer that big, anymore. I'm down to about 215 pounds, and I thank the Most High, God, Yah, for that. And I'll tell y'all that testimony on another video. But, I was that big, and I did feel that bad. And people might say and joke all the time that I don't mind being big, and that's just who I am. But I can tell you from a person, from experience, nobody that's big wants to be big. I mean, all of us want to be a nice size, and so but I don't want people to continue judging people when they are overweight like that. I'm nowhere near that size right now, but I look at people completely different, because you don't know what people are going through and what caused them to put on weight. Everybody that's overweight is not because of eating. I'm gonna tell you that right now. People looked at me like, man, why don't you just quit eating? But it wasn't the case. I was sick and I was on medication. Some people have thyroid problems that make them put on weight. And even if some people do put on weight because of eating, a lot of eating comes from stress and things like that. So you don't know what somebody's going through that might be overweight. Let's stop laughing at people. Everybody don't laugh, but those who are laughing and putting people down that are overweight, we need to stop that, because you don't know how that person became the weight that they are.